Rankings podcast. I am your host, basketball data nerd Lucas McNelly. Well, we had a great week of high school basketball, as always. Every week of high school basketball is a great week. We had buzzer beaters, we had big upsets, we had small upsets, we had my computer act weird as I started to do this, record this the first time, and throw everything off. And I've already recorded this once, and now we're gonna do it again. And if it screws it up again, then I'm gonna go to bed and there's not gonna be a podcast. So we'll see. We're all gonna find out together when I finish, and it's gonna be an adventure. Yeah, we had a kid up in the county go off for 51. So that's the high water mark. If you're gunning for that, if you're a player in the state and you're like, I think I can get the high water mark for points in a game, it's 51. Penobscot Valley dropped 99 on Saturday, so that's the. I don't think anyone's hit 100 yet. So that's the top level to get to for that. So, but first we're going to look at a couple of buzzer beaters. We're going to start in Nokomis. So we're gonna do some buzzer beaters. We're gonna look at some video from last night. Um, yeah, last night, and then we'll go through the top 10, and then the tourney odds are here. So we're gonna talk about the tourney odds just a little bit, and then later this week, I think I have a show lined up with a guest. It's been tricky getting people with the holidays and everything scheduled. Um, you know. So anyway, so let's go to Nokomis, where Nokomis leads Hamden by, I believe, two. And that is Mallory Lozier from Hamden with the game winner. She is a freshman. Thanks to Andrew Morong for sending that over. And, it just proves my theory that I have that there's just some names where if you see them on the roster, you go, I don't know, man, I think we should guard that one. And that's one of those names. So it looks like Hamden, surprise, surprise, has another great player on the way. The rest of A North is thrilled, I'm sure, or I guess next year might be double A. So let's then go to Chevrolet, where they lead by, I believe, also two. And this is Ethan Snow from WHOU on the call.
They can get it in. It comes in the flaker. She'll get it across the timing stripe, out to the far side, up top. Rummelhart. Rummelhart pulls for the win. She hits with over 3 seconds to go. Timeout call on the floor. Megan Rummelhart. Now time's going to run off, and now the officials are talking about it, but a huge three from Megan Rummelhart.
If you think Chevrolet looks really surprised on that clip, it's because they are. They were up quite a bit in this game, and Scarborough closed on a 10-0 run to finish it out and give Chevrolet their first loss of the year. We'll get back to Chevrolet when we do the top 10. So let's go to Camden, where I took the picture that's behind me if you're watching the video. Last night for Camden Medomak doubleheader. The Instagram account on Instagram, this was the game of the day. It was not the game, or game of the week. Sorry, game of the week. It was not the game of the week. It was not the game of the day. It was not even the best game played on that day in that gym. It was 13th in the game of the day rankings, which is not very high. But, we do what we do to. I don't think there's a lot of intellectual rigor put into that process. Let's just say that. Anyway, so the girls' game was much better. Medomak was up early. Then Camden hit a three at the buzzer of over halftime to tie it at the half. And then they had a huge third quarter from number 22, whose name escapes me, and I forgot to bring my program with me. And they were up 8 at one point, and then Medomak just locked in defensively in a really impressive way. Camden didn't make a field goal in the fourth quarter of that game as Medomak pulled out the win, 44-42, and that moved them to first place in B South in the heel point standings. They had a pretty good week, the Medomak girls. They also earlier in the week beat Spruce Mountain, who of course beat them in the semifinals last year. So two really big road wins for them. Very encouraging if you're a Medomak fan. The boys game was, I don't know who's Look, it wasn't the game. It wasn't. No one thought it was going to be a good game other than an Instagram account, and it wasn't a good game at all. It was. There was a lot of people there, which is great. Medomak was in control early and often, and it was something like 35-17 at halftime, and could have been much much worse. It was interesting in that it was the number one offense versus of Class A versus the number one defense of Class B. Medomak was favored by 10 plus, something like that, by the model. And then we're going to go to the third quarter. And you've maybe already heard about this play. But this is Main Coast TV's Charlie Crockett on the call. And then we're gonna play it, and then it's gonna go to a slow motion. So if you see that or hear that, that's what's going on. This is late in the third quarter. I think there's like a minute left in the third quarter. So let's watch tape.
Over to Ames. It won't go. Long pass all the way out here. And oh, boy. Wow. Boy, oh, boy. Lash really went down hard, and that one I think he hurt his back on. Way out here.
Boy, oh boy, is right. A little bit of context here. Probably 40 seconds previously to that, that's Gabe Lash who got hurt. Gabe Lash had a dunk that he was fouled on and took a pretty nasty fall and was down for 10 seconds or so. The sort of dunk, and a Camden fan, John Duke, who's a Camden parent, and I think he's in charge of not the alumni, he's in charge of the boosters or something. Anyway, I was sitting next to John Duke, and he's looked at me and he goes, "That's exactly the sort of reason why we shouldn't have the dunk technicals," and I don't think that Gabe could have maybe hung on the rim there, because the foul knocked off his trajectory a little bit and he was sort of barely got it in. But let's say he could have. That's a situation where you should be able to hang on the rim, because if we're so concerned about safety that we're taking away the 1-and-1, which is a play that no one has ever been hurt on ever. If you can think of someone who's been hurt on a 1-and-1, it's probably a complete fluke, like a non-contact injury in football, where you're like, well, there goes his MCL. But if we're so worried about safety that we're going to take away the 1-and-1, and you got to be able to hang on the rim a little bit to be able to, we've had a couple dunk technicals recently. Nolan Ames from Camden had one where you've got to be able to stay up there long enough to make sure you can land safely. You can stop swinging wildly in one direction, or you can sort of hang up, look down, and go, okay, I can land cleanly. I'm not going to land on someone and twist an ankle or fall or whatever. Not going to hurt anyone. I mean, we saw it in the Celtics game, the Celtics Thunder game, where who was it? Hartenstein maybe landed on Derek White. And they got all wrapped up, and that could have very easily been an injury. So I just don't get why we're so stuck on this, like we're protecting the backboards or something over human beings who can get hurt. So anyway, that's some context to that. 40 seconds later, there's this play. It's not a basketball play, is what I'm going to say conservatively. It's a football play. There were some jokes going around the stands from the Medomak football team that if you want to play basketball like that, then maybe you should try 11-man football. And I love that sort of cross-sport trash talk, which is perfect for a rivalry game or any game, really. A little more trash talking never hurt anybody. But so it's a football play, not a basketball play. From my angle, I didn't get a great look at it. There were a number of people, and I'll let you guess which side they were cheering for, who thought the punishment from that should range from a flagrant foul to a banishment from ever playing basketball again. That's harsh. That's a bit harsh. I think in real time, they called it an intentional foul. You can't call that a common foul, because clearly, and you can't call that a common foul. They called it an intentional foul, which I think was the right play. I've watched that video probably 15 times, and he does seem to be going for the ball. I won't name the defender because I don't want to put anyone on blast, as the kids say. But he does seem to be making an attempt at the ball. And I think what happened, and we were talking about it afterwards with a couple people, and I think maybe that Lash took a step that the defender didn't think he was going to take, and it sort of threw everything out of control. And I think maybe the defender just got a little bit out of control and ended up with an 80s style hard foul and an intentional foul as the right play. My main issue with it is the game was over. There was a minute left in the third quarter. It was like a 25-point game. The game's over. You don't need to be making a hard foul there. Just let him dunk the ball. Big deal. That's where I think the issue is not like this was a 3-point game and you have to foul hard to prevent the basket and make sure he earns it at the line and all that. The game's over. We're all just trying to get out of there without anybody getting hurt. Lash, to his credit, I thought his game was over. This is pretty much out of hand. He came back in to start the fourth quarter, played a big chunk of the fourth quarter. And Camden got an assist, I think, on his first playback. And Camden made a little bit of a run at it in the fourth quarter, probably trying to get to cover the model spread of 10 plus. And they got it to 10, but not quite. And Medomak ended up winning by 12. So they ended up also covering. But it was I will say, to Camden's credit, I didn't hear any like cheering, like, yeah, good foul, anything like that. It was a lot of, I was sitting in the Camden section because I like to sit behind the scorer's table. And it was a very collective, oh no. And then very quiet while everyone waited for him to get up, and then big, nice round of applause. And one Camden parent said to me that you never want to see that. Obviously, no one ever wants to see that. But even beyond that, you never want to take out the prize fighter in another division, because what does that even gain? So anyway, it was a very fun atmosphere. Lots of people. There's going to be, I think, Camden hosts Oceanside this week, so that could be definitely a game worth going to. That has more game of the week style flair to it, as it should be closer. And actually, there's a lot of good games this week. So let's go into, look at my rundown. Yeah, let's go into the top 10. So, girls first, and we're doing top 15. We'll just read off the extra 5 so that people go, well, what about them? Why aren't they in the top 10? Well, they're 12th, so chill. Okay. All right. So, in order, number 15 is South Portland. This is the girls. Number 14 is Medomak Valley. Number 13 is Caribou. Number 12 is Oceanside. Number 11 is Spruce Mountain. And I know what you're thinking. Didn't Spruce Mountain just lose to Medomak Valley? Yes, they did. Thank you for asking. The model doesn't care. It doesn't even look at that. And it's not like the AP 25 where you get yourself all twisted into knots and go like, well, because you got them right there. You've got Oceanside beat Medomak. Medomak beat Spruce. Oceanside hasn't played Spruce. I think they might play them later. And then you can get all wrapped up in that, and it's a fool's errand. Spruce is higher because they played one more game, is pretty much the answer. All right, so number 10 is Coney. They move up 4 spots this week. They're 8-1. They are plus 91 on the season. This week they won at Brewer 53-41 and got a big win against Mount Ararat 57-53. If you're interested, Mike Mandel has a really nice game story on the Coney Mount Ararat game and talking about Coney and all the stuff they've gone through this year and trying to repeat in A North despite the obvious graduation losses from last season. They are 14th in the state in scoring at 55.4 points per game. This week they will play Nokomis and they will host Nokomis, and they will host Brewer. Number 9 is Marshwood. They slide 5 spots this week. They're 8-1. And why did they slide? Well, they lost to Biddeford 55-65. And then they beat Falmouth 68-22, but they're not worth any points. And they won at Deering 55-41. They are 8th in scoring at 58 points a game. They are plus 146 on the season. And this week they will travel. This is a tricky week for them. At Wyndham. Wyndham's a little feisty. They lost to Bangor on Friday, which was the game of the day. It turned out to be a little bit of a bust. But no, that was the game of the week. That was the game of the day Saturday. Yeah, that's right. That was the game of the day Saturday. And then they are traveling to Brunswick, who had a rough time with some missing starters. Based on their scores lately, it seems like some of them are back. Number 8 is Mount Ararat. They dropped 2 spots. They're 5-2. They are plus 115 on the season. They beat Medomak Valley 51-42. And then they, of course, lost to Coney 53-57. They are 11th this year in strength of schedule so far, and they are 11th in scoring. This week they have Deering. They're going to travel to Brunswick. Brunswick's got a fun week. And then they will host Biddeford. Number 7 is Edward Little. They're 6-3. They're plus 89. They won at Bangor 50-44. They beat Cheverus on the road 45-40. And then they beat Bonnie Eagle on the road 58-22. They're 4th in strength of schedule. And this week they have Thornton Academy. Number 6 is Gorham. They move up 5 spots from, they'll be 11th. They're 8-1 on the year. They're plus 210 on the season. They beat Thornton Academy 46-38. They lost at Wyndham at the buzzer 40-41. And they beat Cheverus 62-46. They are 6th in points allowed at 28.1 a game. And they are 7th in scoring differential with that 210. This week they will travel to Massabesic. Number 5 is Cheverus. Cheverus had a bad week. They dropped only 3 spots just because they had a built-in cushion. They're 6-3 on the season. They're plus 137. They lost to Scarborough in the buzzer beater we watched earlier, 44-47. They lost to number 7 Edward Little, 40-45, and they lost to number 6 Gorham, 46-62. That is not a good week, but those are good teams. So that's the stretch of the schedule. You look at it and you go, we hope to get 2 or 3 of these, and they got none of them. They're 15th in scoring on the year at 55. Things are going to get a little easier for them this week as they play Thornton Academy, and they're going to try to break a 3-game losing streak, which I don't know if anyone had that on their bingo card. Number 4 is Biddeford. They move up 8 spots. They are 6-2. They are plus 182. They actually lost to Sanford this week, 44-55, but then they beat Westbrook 47-34, and they beat Marshwood 65-55. Marshwood, who is 9th, and that's most of where their movement came from. They're 10th in strength of schedule, and they are 15th in percent perfect, which is the metric that determines how dominant you are relative to your schedule, at 69.5%. This week they have Kennebunk, they're at Massabesic, and they're at Mount Ararat. Number 3 is GNG. They're sticking at 3, 8-2, plus 157. They beat Lake Region on the road 52-34, and they won at Noble 61-31. They're 12th in scoring differential, and they are 14th in percent perfect at 69.6. This week they have Westbrook and Greeley. Number 2 is Lawrence. They move up 3 spots. They are 8-0. They're plus 250. They won at Gardner 79-52 and beat Brewer 62-37. They are 2nd in scoring in the state at 70.3. They're 3rd in scoring differential, and they're 4th in percent perfect at 93.8. And spoiler alert, they're real good. This week they are at Skowhegan and at Nokomis. Oxford Hills is number 1 still for 2nd week in a row. They are 7-2 on the season. They're plus 152. They beat Wyndham 40-36. They lost at Bangor 39-40, and they beat Mount Blue 78-21. They're 19th in scoring and 4th in strength of schedule, and they will go to Lewiston and South Portland. So there's your girls' top 15 in order: South Portland, Medomak, Caribou, Oceanside, Spruce, Coney, Marshwood, Mount Ararat, Edward Little, Gorham, Cheverus, Biddeford, GNG, Lawrence, and Oxford Hills. Let's go to the boys. Bit of a surprise here at the top. Number 15 is Matt Nawcook, which I was not expecting and meant to look up before my computer started acting weird. Number 14 is Skank. They had a big win against Bangor Christian at Bangor Christian. I think they won by 13, something like that. Number 13 is Ellsworth. Number 12 is Caribou, and number 11 is Mount Blue. So, kicking off the top 10 is Spruce at 8-1. They beat Monmouth 60-49. They lost to Medomak Valley 43-55, and at Medomak Valley, and they beat Lake Region 67-54. They're plus 188 on the season. They're 12th in scoring, and they're 16th in points allowed. They have this week, they're at Oak Hill, and then they have Lincoln Academy. Number 9 is Mount Abram. They slide 2 spots. They're 8-0. They beat Carabac 84-55. They're plus 117. They're 13th in scoring at 64.8. This week they have Oak Hill. Oak Hill is not going to have a fun week. I'm not sure exactly where Oak Hill is ranked, but they can't be looking forward to this week. And then they're at Winthrop. Number 8 is Brewer. Brewer's finally in the top 10. They move up 3 spots. They are 10-0. They started the season in the 90s. They beat Coney 58-41. They won at Mount Blue in a close one, 35-32. And then they beat Lawrence 63-48. They're plus 165. They lead Class A in points allowed at 41.8 and in differential at the 165. This week they're at Hamden and at Coney. Number 7 is Falmouth. They drop 1 spot to 7th. They're 7-1 plus 108. They beat Marshwood 54-21. They beat Brunswick 64-39. And that's how you drop, because neither of those teams are worth very many points. They're third in Class A in points scored at 59.5. This week they're at Westbrook, at Scarborough, and on January 11th they have Noble, which has high potential for game of the week, for like the actual game of the week, and not the game of the week on Instagram. But I'm guessing it might also be the game of the week on Instagram. Although I think they used that already in the season opener. Number 6 is York. They dropped 4 spots. They're 9-0. They're plus 181. They beat Cape 69-51. They beat Wells 79-44, and they pretty much just dropped because those teams aren't worth very much. They're third in scoring in the state at 71.7 points per game. They are 5th in percent perfect at 93.9%. And they are, this week they'll go to Paris. I think it's Paris or South Paris, wherever Lake Region is. And then they'll host Freeport and Kennebunk. Number 5 is Cheverus. They move up 3 spots. They're 8-1. Plus 178. They beat Massabesic by a bunch. Then they won at Edward Little 58-43, and they blew out Gorham 68-40. They are 11th in scoring, and they lead Class AA in scoring differential. This week they will face Thornton Academy, Wyatt Benoit, and Thornton Academy. Number 4 is South Portland. Manny Hidalgo and the Red Riots. They move up 5 spots. They're 7-2 plus 93. They beat Deering 69-60. They beat Scarborough 78-47, and they blew out Portland 70-48, which is always a fun rivalry game. Forgot to write down any of their stats, and this week they have at Wyndham, which that's probably going to be the game of the week, and they're at Oxford Hills. Number 3 is Medomak Valley. They're 8-0. They're sticking at 3. They beat Spruce 55-43, and they went to Camden and won that game 62-50. They're plus 190. They're 4th in the state in points allowed at 38.4 points a game. They are 3rd in percent perfect at 97.3%, and I'm pretty sure they're 1st in percent perfect versus teams in the top 25 and the top 50. This week they will head to Levitt. They will host Morse, and then they will travel down to Yarmouth in a game that is so far a matchup that's been really fun. And I don't know how Yarmouth seems to be down this year, so that might be less fun this year. Number 2 is Wyndham. The defending AA champs are 8-0. They move up 2 spots. They are plus 152. They beat Oxford Hills 75-55. Beat Gorham in a rematch of the championship game 78-48, and made short work of Bangor 68-38. They are 2nd in scoring at 71.8 points a game. I think Valley is 1st, if you're wondering. Their percent perfect is 89.1%. That's good for 6th. They will have South Portland on Tuesday, which should be a lot of fun. Then at Marshwood and at Scarborough. And number 1, sticking at number 1 is Noble. They're 9-0. They have their 2 1,000-point scorers, which is super rare. They won at Brunswick 63-37. They beat Thornton Academy 73-53, and then they won a squeaker at GNG 57-54. They're 12th in strength schedule, and they're 10th in percent perfect at 85.1%. This week they will have Scarborough, and then the big one at Falmouth. So there's your top 15. Matt Knockhook, Skank. I'm never going to get that right. Let's start over. Matt Knockhook, Skank, Ellsworth, Caribou, Mount Blue. Then in the top 10, Spruce Mountain, Mount Abram, Brewer, Falmouth, York, Cheverus, South Portland, Medomak Valley, Wyndham, and Noble. So there's that. All right. So if you're by the time you're reading this, unless my computer decides to be even more difficult, which don't put it past it this week, um, the tourney odds are out. What are the tourney odds, you ask, if you're new to this? The tourney odds are a big reason a lot of people subscribe to the website. And this is where I give you a pitch on why you subscribe to the website and subscribe to all the things, because it helps me do this nonsense, which, it's a little ridiculous. But anyway, so you should subscribe to the site because it's only $6 a month and you're going to get way more value than $6 a month. You're going to save yourself so much time using the heal points on the site as opposed to the MPA's heal points, that just even if you bill yourself at $20, $30 an hour, something like that, you're going to make the money back in 3 days, because you've seen the MPA's heal point site is terrible. It takes forever to load, and then you gotta load it again, and then it takes up your whole screen, and it's a big thing. And on the site, it's just you bring it up, and then you click on a team, and it shows you their whole schedule, and it shows you who's left, and it shows you how many points those teams are worth that they haven't played yet. And so you can look and go, oh man, hey, if we beat them, we probably need to beat them if we're going to move up, because that's the game we have left. Or you look at the team you're going up against, and or you're fighting for positioning, and you look and you go, oh man, they don't really have a lot of points left, but this is the one that we need to like really keep an eye on, because if they win this one, then they're in danger of passing us. So it's very helpful. You also get a projection for every game in the newsletter, and so when you're sitting there at the Medomak Camden game and it's getting not close, but it's getting, closer, you sort of go, oh, I wonder what the spread is here. Let's look it up. Oh, it's 10.5. Oh, look at that. They're down 14 right now. I wonder if they can cover this. And it gives you something to do when the game's not very good. So that's my pitch. It's a great value. Anyway, but one of the big values is the tourney odds. And what the tourney odds are is it's a Monte Carlo simulation. So let me back up. It's actually a lot of Monte Carlo simulations, and I won't get into the weeds here on the math of it all because there's a lot of math to it. But basically what it does is, so for every game, the model gives you a projected score, but it also gives you the percentage likelihood that team A beats team B. And let's say it's 75% that a team wins a game. So what this does is it simulates the season 1,000 times. And it uses a random number generator on every game. So in this game, where team A is 75% favorite to beat team B, it'll run a random number generator, and in 75% of the simulations, team A will win that game, and in 25% of the simulations, team A will lose that game. And the reason you do lots of simulations, you do that, you're supposed to do 10,000, but my computer can't handle 10,000 unless I figure something out, some expensive software out, and I don't have the money for that, so it's probably not happening. Anyway, so the reason you do a lot is because what you're looking for is combinations. You're looking for the combination where you win this game, and this game. Oh, but you lose this game, and so on. And so the 1,000 doesn't get you there, and even 10,000 wouldn't get you there, because it's like the number of possibilities in heal points is an astronomical number. It's like 50 zeros, something like that. It's crazy. But you're looking for the combinations, and you're looking for the weird combination where Noble loses 4 straight games, or where Wyndham ends up at 10-8 or something like that. It's probably not going to get all of them. It's not going to get the South Portland loses the rest of their games, or the Wiscasset girls win the rest of their games, or things like that, because that's a pretty hard needle to thread. But it's going to find a lot of them. And so then what it does is in each of those seasons, it then calculates the heal points, and it sort of gives you a bell curve of where you could potentially land. So let's take a look so this is B North girls. So if you're watching the thing, this is what it looks like. It'll tell you if a team is in or out. So as you can see here, Caribou, Erskine, MDI, Marana Cook, and Old Town are in. Winslow and Waterville are out. That doesn't mean they're mathematically eliminated, because, like I said, it hasn't found all of those simulations. It hasn't probably found the simulation where Caribou loses the rest of their games. And if they lose the rest of their games, they could miss the tournament. But it hasn't found that. And so the likelihood of Caribou losing the rest of their games is astronomically small. I think we can all agree on that. And so, bearing that or failing that, they're in. So, it has not, what that basically is saying is it has not found a scenario in which Caribou doesn't make the playoffs. If it's got a question mark next to you, then you've got work to do. And then the reverse, it has not found a situation where Waterville makes the playoffs, and I think that's probably fair. And then let's slide over here. If you see, it gives you a distribution. So Caribou is 86% to get the 1 seed. And then if they don't get the 1 seed, there are, 7 teams who could theoretically get the 1 seed. Erskine, MDI, Miranda, Cook, Ellsworth, Old Town, Presque Isle, Baps. And then you just go out for every one. So Caribou is 86% to get the 1. They're 8.4% to get the 2, 3.4 to get the 3, and then it trails off. So they're probably going to get the 1. And if things sort of fall apart, then they might get the 2. Maybe Madeline Dupre gets hurt, God forbid, or decides to take up cross-stitching instead of basketball. Then they're probably falling pretty far, but bearing something weird. And then this is kind of a cluttered one because B North is a mess. So let's go over to B South girls and you get a sort of a better idea of where this works. So here you can see Spruce, Medomak, Biddeford all have buys. So we can't even find a scenario where they fall into the play-in round, which is at 7 through 10. So, and you can see they're sort of the 3 of them and Oceanside are all sort of clustered in at the top 4. So we already know those are our top 4 seeds. With failing some weird nonsense, those are the top 4 seeds. I guess maybe Wells gets super hot or something strange happens, but those are your top 4 seeds. Spruce, Medomak, Biddeford, and Oceanside, we don't know the order yet. Well, we kind of do. It looks like it's going to be Spruce or Medomak for the 1, and then Biddeford, the other one will probably get the 2. If it all falls apart, they could go to 3, and then it's going to be Biddeford and Oceanside fighting for the 3-4. So that we already got sorted out, and then we can see that Cape Elizabeth and Lisbon are out. If you click on a team, so this is MDI, and it's a little hard to read. So MDI is in. They have 5 wins. It says total order needed to clinch is 8. That might be wrong. Anyway, it gives you an idea. That's a little wonky. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But it's sort of your target number of where it finds every situation it finds. Anyway, so their best case scenario is 16-2. That would get them to 59.3 points. That'd be the 1 seed. Worst case scenario that it's found is 7-11. So you can see it hasn't found the scenarios where they finished 5-13. The worst it's found is 7-11. Probably because there's just not going to lose to some of those teams. There's not going to lose to like Waterville or Winslow they probably wouldn't play them. Anyway, and the lowest they can probably drop is 11. This makes a little more sense when you look at the Lake Region page. So we'll zoom in here. This is the Lake Region girls. So you can see it's got 15-3 is a 0.2% of the time they're going to finish 15-3, and then they're in. And they're at 11-7. They finished 11-7, 23.5% of the time, and they're in on that. 10.8, they're in. 9-9, 20% of the time they finish 9-9, and in 98% of those simulations they're in. So there's a scenario where Lake Region can go 9-9 and they don't get in. At 8-10, it's 93%. At 7-11, it's 51%. 6-12 is 33%. So if you're a Lake Region fan, you look at this and you go, okay, we got to get to 8 wins. 7 wins feels sketchy, and like we're like a lot of our help scenarios are just going to fall by the wayside as the season goes along. So you really want to get to 8 wins right now. And so then if you're Lake Region, you start looking at your schedule and you go, where are those 8 wins? As you might imagine, coaches really like this because then they don't have to text me and ask me what's the likelihood that they finish X, Y, or Z. They can look at the thing and then they are checking it. They'll be checking it every day. And this is definitely a paid feature. So if you're, thinking of whether or not you want to subscribe, this is one of the features that people definitely subscribe to. It's stunningly accurate. It's 1 year I tracked it and on January 1st, it had something like 93% of the field right, of the final field, like even down in the 8 seed, where it was like, I don't know, they're probably going to be the 8 seed. It had something in the 90s right, and it was, what was it? It was something, some really high number also in that range of where a team was either the correct seed or they were like one seed off in either direction. So this, I mean, it has misses, but it doesn't have a lot of misses. So that should be out, and you can check that out, and you can see where your team might fall, where they might not fall. It's also very fun to look at, and then when you read it in the paper or on a broadcast or on Instagram or just your idiot cousin who goes, "Oh, I heard that they can still get to the 3 seed," and you look at the tourney odds, you go, "No, they cannot. It's the 3 seed is not happening. The highest we can get is the 5." So let's not start filling kids' heads full of nonsense, and let's just look at the math, because math is here to be your friend. Okay, that's gonna be the show. Yeah, I think that's it. This has been a production of MaineBasketballRankings.com, your source for the most comprehensive coverage of Maine high school basketball from and everywhere in between. This podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts and a bunch of places you don't. If you enjoy this, please leave a nice review because it really helps out with the algorithms. And go subscribe on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. Please subscribe to the YouTube. I'm supposed to tell people to smash the subscribe button, which makes me feel so very old. Anyway, tell your friends, tell your enemies.